How do we look at art? Why do we look at art? These eternal questions are the focus of a new book by former Metropolitan Museum of Art director Philippe de Montebello and art critic Martin Gayford. It is called Rendezvous with Art. The pair visited some of the world's most important paintings and sculpture to explore the experience of art. Joining me now, Philippe de Montebello and Martin Gayford. This is just wonderful because, I mean, you look at it through a conversation. You look at the magic of art and understand it and appreciate it more. And you do it through this dialogue between the two of you, and you do it in such an interesting way. Who started this? Whose idea was this?
Well, I suppose the idea evolved. First of all, Philippe and I met and we bonded over a lunch in a restaurant over the Seine from the Louvre, which was a sort of anticipation because we got a couple of chapters.
The place to do it, yes.
And we started off. We thought we would do conversations about what is a museum, and then Philippe, I think, suggested that it would be more fun and fresher to just go to galleries and respond to the works as we walk past them. And,
that's true, because I tend to look at museums as containers of works of art.
Yes.
And the contents always interested me more than the container.
Yes.
So we looked at art, and we talked about it, we would discuss it, and the whole idea is that our reactions, our response to works of art were things that could be translated, at least in part, into words, and conceivably helpful, useful for the reader.
Did the two of you find that there's some basic difference in how you approached this or how you approach art, or did you find out surprising things about each other in your reaction to art?
Well, we certainly have different tastes, different responses to individual works of art, but on the whole, there's we did stay pretty much with very high-quality works in the Prado, in the Louvre, in the British Museum, and museums in Holland and Florence, and so we weren't experimental in terms of the works that we were seeking out, except perhaps with antiquities.
Yes.
You were surprised in Florence.
Yes, well, I was surprised in New York when Philippe, possibly the moment when the book really started, Philippe was showing me around the Met, and we had, as you can imagine, a very full day, and we looked at the new Islamic galleries just been opened and all sorts of wonderful things, and I discovered he tended to have some sort of secret destination often in mind when we were going around galleries. He took me to the Egyptian galleries and stopped in front of a fragment of yellow jasper with just a woman's lips. Yeah. And he said, "This is one of the greatest works of art in the world."
I did. It's one of the great works of art in the world. It is it's simply an amazing object that speaks to us through 3,000 years of history. You have it right there in front of you. And part of the magic of it is its fragmentary condition. First of all, simply what is there is obviously a work of the result of immense skill, immense sensitivity, imagination. But what I love about it also is the notion of the fragment. And what is surprising about the fragment is that in the end, the fragment is what lasts, and the whole is what is ephemeral.
You said that you might not actually be thrilled if the top of the head were restored to the piece. You wouldn't. That the fact that the top of the head is not there is part of its greatness.
For me, it is. At least, having looked at it a great deal, it's a little bit like a character in a book that you love, and in a way, you don't want a movie made. You don't want it. The casting is likely to be wrong. This is not the image that you have in your mind of that particular character. And my mind's eye has something probably very different from what in fact existed, assuming I even think of the top of the head. The lips are so accomplished.
The second one is the detail of the statue of Uta. So why is this on the selection?
Well, obviously, our assumption was that no matter how scholarly you are and how much information you have about art, in the end, the reaction's personal, and it might have to do with love. I mean, it's an emotional thing. So one day, I asked Philippe, what was the first work of art you ever fell in love with?
And this is what he said.
Well, the answer was, this is the first work of art I ever fell in love with. It's also, I think, the first woman I ever fell in love with. I think I was at 13 or 14 when the Voices of Silence, the Museum Without Walls of André Malraux came out with fabulous black and white four-tone plates, and in it was this image. And I was bowled over by it, fell in love with her, looked at that high collar, very dashing, the eyelids heavy as if after a night of love, and I just fell in love with it and pursued it, obviously, not as a woman, but wanted to look at other works of art. This is a work of the Gothic period, and I guess my love for for medieval art also comes from that.
Do you ever fall out of love with a piece of art?
Yes, and that's an interesting thing, and this is why part of I think the good things about this book is that it will make the ultimate viewer of art, I think, relax and not feel guilty about things. One does feel out of love. There are also moments when one is indifferent to a work that once had an immense impact, and then another day it'll strike you again. We are all different. The work of art changes according to our mood, our response. If a lot of people around it, a lot of noise or whatever, the mood one is in. So there is nothing fixed. It's a kind of a sliding frame.
Yeah. So it's different to look at a piece of art when there's an empty room and nobody's there, like after the museum is closed, than when it's bustling with people.
A rare thing. This is the great paradox of museums. You want as many people as possible inducted into the joys of looking at art, but not with you.
Yeah.
This is one of the paradoxes. Well, museums, public museums, were an 18th century invention, and now in the 21st century, more and more people want to see particularly certain style works can be quite difficult to see. The Mona Lisa is the most obvious example. There are half a dozen. The Sistine Chapel is now absolutely packed during opening hours.
All right, the next one is the Chimera of Arezzo.
Martin said, now, surely we must go to the Uffizi. And I said, well, surely not. There were probably 1,000 people in line in front of it. And I said, I love the Archaeological Museum in Florence that not enough people go to, and we'll be probably alone. I think we had it to ourselves.
Virtually to ourselves, yes. And it's a lovely museum. But
so what do you say about this?
Well, it's a work that it strikes immediately by the ferocity of the animal, but at the same time, a ferocity contained in a work of extraordinarily precise, delicate chiseling, almost like a goldsmith. So you have, again, a paradox. It's a world full of paradoxes. It's also Etruscans of the 4th century BC.
Right.
It's survived in beautiful condition, and it just has incredible presence. You stand in front of it and you think it's going to leap out and take a big bite out of your chin.
The next one is a fragment of Kylix.
Yes, of a Kylix crater, which is a Greek vase of the 5th century. And this was an instance where, I show, and I tell my reader, all of you, that, it's okay if you don't understand certain things, if you are indifferent to things that everybody else loves. And I write in the book that for years I hated Greek vases.
Yes.
Every time I approached a gallery full of Greek vases, I wanted to run away. They were all black and brown and red. And one of our curators one day said to me, let me teach you how to look at Greek vases. Joan Mertens. And she said, you collect drawings, you love drawings. I said, yes. I said, so she took me to fragments, to just little shards of vases. And she said, now look at this as if it were drawing on paper. Look at that image. It's not a vessel. Because, it's not something utilitarian. I said, yes, what a beautiful drawing it is. And she said, now just imagine it in 3-dimension on a vessel. And little by little, I began to approach Greek vases in a completely different way.
Yeah. Well, you have anything to say about this one? Yeah.
Well, what Philippe's just said is shows us that the experience of even the director of the Metropolitan Museum can make discoveries.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
About himself.
Right. Yeah. Can understand something that he previously had no great interest in. Okay, the next one is Madonna and the Child.
Well, this was one of Philippe's purchases when he was director. And my question about it was really, how do works get into museums? Because somebody has to make a decision. Somebody has to decide this belongs in the museum or it doesn't belong in. And Philippe had that responsibility.
It's the most expensive purchase ever.
I don't know that.
When you-
Well, it's certainly one of the
when you arranged
most expensive purchases in terms of dollars, in terms of converted dollars over time and inflation. I don't know, but
Yeah.
certainly, possibly,
It's 45 million at the time.
yeah, but possibly more or less, and possibly per square centimeter. Certainly was one of the most, because it's a relatively small painting.
Yeah.
But it was the last painting by the great Sienese master of around 1300, Duccio. There are no others known and recorded, and for us it was extremely important. It is also an immensely beautiful work, and it marks the transition of the hieratic Byzantium with the Renaissance.
Okay, the next one is the swing. Take a look at this. You love this just in terms of sheer beauty.
It's wonderful because it's so uncomplicated. It's exactly what you're looking at. It's a wonderful, frivolous picture of the 18th century, of the Ancien Régime, wonderfully erotic and revealing. Look at where the young man is and what he's looking up at. Not exactly the swing. The colors are frothy, like a theater set. And once in a while, it's very nice not to have to plumb depths of very deep emotion.
And it was part of an afternoon we had, we saw it in the Wallace collection in London, and I remember as we walked up the stairs, tremendously opulent with marbles and very rich wallpapers and all these paintings. Philippe just drank in the atmosphere, and he said how this sort of decor really works with paintings, certain kind of painting.
I mean, it really was a kind of the libertinism of the regime at the time. Yeah. Okay, the next one.
Velázquez is, I mean, if I want to quote Edouard Manet, the great French 19th century impressionist, who said he's the greatest painter who ever lived, Velázquez is an astonishing artist who translate paint into life, into truth, at a level of dignity of the human person. This is a dwarf shown with enormous empathy, and a sense of the quality of the paint and of the surface that is simply miraculous.
What do you think of this?
Well, I have to agree. It's absolutely fabulous. You asked whether there were things we disagreed about. Well, there are perhaps slight differences in nuance. To Philippe, Velázquez is, as to many people, the very greatest painter. I might suggest Rembrandt or Titian for that position, but this is a masterpiece.
You said, I think, also that the face of the subject seems as alive in this painting today as 350 years ago.
Well, he is looking at us.
Yeah, there's a gaze, there's a sense of
yes,
looking up.
He was looking straight at Velázquez as Velázquez painted him, and he was looking through Velázquez to the whole future. And the miracle of Velázquez is to be able to have actually effaced himself and allowed Sebastiano de Morra, I think that's his name, to speak to us across time and space.
Martin, why is there not more contemporary art in this book?
Well, somehow it didn't make the cut. We did go to a few. We went to the Reina Sofia in Madrid.
Very quickly, there's no Islamic art, which is a passion of mine. I adore it. There is no medieval art, which is a passion. The book is serendipitous to a certain degree. It's where our agendas actually fit. Yeah. I'm going to Amsterdam, I said, for a lecture, and so he flew over from London. We didn't happen upon it. I would have loved to speak about early Cubist painting, which I adore, Léger pictures of the teens, Matisse, and so on and so forth.
So that's another reason why we started.
So this was just logistics then?
A lot of it was logistics. We tried to put some order into it, and in a sense there's a certain coherence because we're doing a great deal of antiquity and essentially European art.
Have you changed in any way in your attitude about contemporary art?
Well, all art was contemporary when it was created.
Yes.
And contemporary art exists, and I'm fascinated by it. Whether I'm as profoundly moved by a lot of things that are made today as by another time, probably not. But when you say contemporary, I mean now.
Right.
I don't consider modern art or even late Matisse, such the great cutouts at MoMA on view in New York, contemporary. To me, that is modern art. It's very different. Contemporary with the capital C is what is being done now.
The book is called Rendezvous with Art. Philippe de Montebello and Martin Gayford, I thank you for coming. It's a great It's a great experience to feel and understand that when you look at a piece of art, so much goes into it, and this gives you an informed sense of what has turned on to people about the joy of looking at art and understanding art. Back in a moment. Stay with us.